Celia had the nagging feeling that Chase was lying to her. She shook her head, but smiled at him nonetheless. All right, she capitulated. But I'll let him ask again about Chad. That way we know for certain. You still don't believe me? Replied Chase, clearly upset. She didn't give him a clear answer. She just waved her hand and said, No, I just think it's a bit safer this way. He nodded in agreement. He knew that she didn't have the best impression of him, so he didn't bother to refute her point. Instead, he said, Dr. Zimmerman promised me that he would perform Dottie's surgery next week. Whether you believe me or not, everything will become clear in a week. Next week? Her eyes widened in disbelief. In his arrangements with the doctor, Chad had only been told something vague like soon. She couldn't believe it. Would Dr. Zimmerman really be there next week for Dottie's care? You'll see next week, he said, interrupting her wondering. Silently, he told himself that in 1 week Celia would finally know that her husband wasn't a... She'd know that everything he'd promised would come true. The next 2 days were a bit calmer, and Chase split his time between wandering around the hospital and taking care of things at Blitztech. The new company cars were officially in use, and the news of the delivery of the 100 luxury cars were still all anyone could talk about. One evening, he received a call from Roland with an invitation to dinner. From his tone, Chase knew that he had something to ask of him, so he agreed to attend. They would meet in a private dining room at the Victoria Room in the Regent Hotel. When Chase arrived at the restaurant, there were quite a few people in the room already. He glanced around and saw that there was an empty seat at the head of the table next to Roland. He went to sit down, but was interrupted by Roland, who greeted him with a respectful attitude. Mr. Rothman, I'm glad you're here. Most of the people in the dining room were the famous figures in the medical field. A few others were highly influential residents of Lauderdale. Among them were some first-rate doctors, financial experts, and politicians. Roland was honored that they had all gathered here today at his request. When Chase had entered the room, the other dinner guests had shot each other quizzical looks. Who was this young man receiving guest of honor treatment? Why was Roland act so respectful to someone who looked like well below his station? I'm sorry I'm late, replied Chase. There was a bit of traffic on the way. It's not a problem at all, Roland quickly replied. It's my honor to have you here. We would have waited even longer for you. As everyone listened, they felt even more incredulous. Chase ignored them and sat down at the seat of honor. Everyone was even more surprised now. By all accounts, Roland should have been the one in the seat of honor. Who was this young man? Despite their concerns, no one dared to say a word. Now with everyone there, the meal began. After a few, Roland finally revealed the purpose of his invitation. Mr. Rothman, he began, the reason I invited you here this evening is to ask you a favor. Chase had been expecting this, so he didn't have a big reaction. He just said, Tell me about it. Roland touched his wine glass nervously. He began to tell Chase of his plans to open a medical research institute in Lauderdale. He made the argument that in the United States of America, very few research institutes were able to compete with the cutting-edge research that was happening overseas due to both a lack of funding and disinterest among the general public. He felt that Lauderdale was perfectly positioned to receive international instructors and researchers and therefore to increase America's standing among international medical community. This sounds like a great plan, said Chase enthusiastically. America's medical standards aren't bad, but they're not the best in the world. I admire that you want to be a pioneer. That's a good thing. Roland was a little embarrassed. Yes, from the outset I have the best of intentions, but it appears as though we don't have enough fees to cover the establishment of the institute, including design and construction. And then, of course, after it's built, there are the maintenance fees. Chase understood what he meant. even though he wasn't asking outright. You want me to invest? Roland's face reddened. Yes, he said, unable to avoid the conversation he brought Chase here to have. For the construction of the Institute in the early stage of the project, we'd need an investment of $3 billion in the early stage of the project. We're asking a few other potential investors to donate what they can. I know it's a lot. He paused before continuing. So let me tell you about our plans and the medical professionals already on board. Before he could finish his pitch, Chase interrupted and said directly, it's nothing. It's only $3 billion. Just give Tim Sanders a call to make a formal request and I'll go ahead and approve it. Everyone in the room became abruptly silent. Some continued to chew with their mouths open, dropping food onto the table. Others spilled wine onto the floor as they took their eyes off the bottle of wine they were in the process of pouring. They thought to themselves, $3 billion was a lot of money. It was unbelievable. $3 billion was enough to invest in so many diverse projects from real estate to e-commerce. Whoever this man was, he was obviously someone incredibly important and powerful. Roland held up his glass to toast to Chase, but first whispered to him. Mr. Rothman, are you sure? This isn't a joke. Of course, replied Chase with a shrug. When did you last see me make a joke? Sir, continued Roland, please consider it carefully. We might not see any profit for 10 years. This is a very long-term project. I know, said Chase, picking up a peanut and casually tossing it into his mouth. A research project is never a short-term project, I'm very well aware. So you're sure? Roland asked again. What's wrong? Chase asked, looking at Roland around the room and the shocked faces at the table. $3 billion? It's yours. Everyone was silent. Thank you so much! Roland diffused. He was deeply grateful. A few minutes later, Roland was still in shock. He leaned over to Chase and asked again. Are you sure? $3 billion?
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.